An interaction occurs when the relationship between x and y changes as another variable changes. That another variable is referred to as a moderator variable. Moderators, they can be categorical or they can be quantitative, just as independent and dependent variables can be categorical or quantitative. When we're looking at the significance of an interaction term, we're not necessarily concerned about the significance of the direct effect for either the moderator or the independent variable. We're only concerned about the significance of the interaction term. We can compute that interaction term by mean centering the independent variable and mean centering the moderator variable, and then multiplying the mean centered independent variable by the moderator variable. Moderators can strengthen or they can weaken relationships between an independent variable and a dependent variable. And they also can result in non-significant relationships between an independent variable and a dependent variable. So an interesting moderator variable could be a moderator variable that deactivates the relationship between an independent variable and a dependent variable. An interesting moderator variable might also result in an activated relationship between an independent variable and a dependent variable. In order to help make this clearer, let's consider the following example. Let's look at unemployment rates in Cleveland. As unemployment rates increase, we may expect there to be greater levels of gun violence. But that relationship between unemployment and gun violence may vary by temperature. So as temperature increases, people may be more inclined to let their frustrations boil over, and they also might be more inclined to be in situations where they're more likely to act or be acted upon by others, right? So we would imagine that in warmer months of the year, the relationship between unemployment and gun violence becomes stronger. Let's consider some additional examples. And there's a lot of research that suggests that as a salesperson adapts their presentation for a particular buyer, they're going to be more likely to make a sale. And so we would expect the extent to which salespeople adapt their presentation to be positively associated with the sales that are made by the salesperson. We can also consider variables that may moderate this relationship. And I'm showing you hours of training salesperson received on products, as well as complexity of the solution as two potential moderators. Now, we would anticipate that as salespeople become more familiar with products, which would be driven by hours of training that they receive on those products, that the sales that they're going to make are going to increase as well. But there might also be an interaction between the salesperson's adapting of the presentation and the hours of training that the salesperson receives on the products. We would imagine that their knowledge of products would allow the salesperson to adapt their presentation in a way that's going to capture those unique advantages. And so hours of training that the salesperson receives on products may amplify the positive relationship between the salesperson's adapting of the presentation and the sales that are made by the salesperson. Complexity of the solution may result in fewer sales that are made by a salesperson, but it also may influence the effectiveness of the salesperson adapting their presentation. So as the solution becomes incredibly complex and the salesperson's trying to adapt their presentation, they may not necessarily be able to capture that complexity within the presentation as they're adapting it. And if that's the case, and it becomes more difficult for them to adapt their presentation in an effective manner as the solution becomes more complex, then that positive relationship between the adapting of the presentation and the sales made by the salesperson may actually weaken. And if it weakens, then what we would expect to find is a significant negative interaction term. Now, again, as I had mentioned before, when we're examining moderation, we're not necessarily concerned about the significance of the direct effects. What we're interested in is whether that interaction term in itself is significant.